Hello, hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Skeptics and Seekers Sunday Sermon Supplemental. I should just rename this podcast 5S. There's always some fifth S in there to help me sort this S of a mess out. Mess of an S? Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to whatever we have going on today. I don't remember what it is.
Okay, perfect. It's going to be that kind of show, folks. So brace yourself. Um, I was telling Andrew just before we got started that I am badly hungover. I do not drink. It's a tramadol thing. It's an opioid. I had to take a pain pill. I take maybe one every week and a half. And last night was my one. And God, is it, is it knocking me for a loop? What's worse, I didn't take any notes. I didn't write anything down. I have a general idea that I want to talk about. I only told Andrew about it yesterday while we were in the middle of some other conversation. He has forgotten the subject, and I don't have any notes for it. Gods. So I am doing some preparation for a discussion with Dale. It's supposed to be later this month. We'll see if that actually happens this month. On the existence of God. Dale has laid out various premises. He did a show on miracles between the first and second show that we did. He's got really 3 parts to his major thesis, and every one of those premises requires, posits there is a God. And yet, in none of those premises is it is his work for that laid out. And I want to give him a chance to do the final piece of that, because this is what ties all of that together. So we're gonna give Dale that opportunity. In the meantime, I am doing shows here and there. Andrew has not stopped laughing since I started talking. Is my fly open?
Oh, look. No. Well, I have no idea. No, for not to find out. No, it's like, you're going through this this long explanation that that you're both having to prepare for a show about whether God exists, and it always just strikes me as incredibly funny, right? I don't have to do a lot of exploration. I don't have to create a long thesis. I don't need an 11 premise argument for whether the Leaning Tower of Pisa exists, right? I I don't need endless hours of preparation and 6 years of debate to determine whether the Great Wall of China exists. Yet when we get down to a point where we're talking about God, there's there's years and years and years and years and thousands and thousands and thousands of books, and yet the question's not answered. And so, yes, I'm sorry, but at the moment, it strikes me as funny.
Okay. Your green room tickets to that show, the price just went up. So don't make me raise the price again. Um,
Oh, no.
so
Look, these green room tickets, I think they exist on the same plane that God does. I've never seen one of these tickets.
yeah, but it's charged to your account. Don't worry about it. I got a bot working on it.
Oh,
So yeah,
no, look,
it's a classic AI
I'm
bot. It's called Clippy. Um,
right. See, the thing is, I'm not trying to be rude about this. Um, but when I was a Christian, I would have gone through all of this same tail chasing to try to get that job done. And looking back on it, really is. It really is funny.
yeah,
Um,
I look. I was very much a presuppositionalist, although I didn't know that term at the time. Uh, I never debated the "Is there a God?" question, during my time in church and the ministry. First of all, when you're in church and the ministry, you don't have to debate it. You're talking to people who already believe it. When you're in the South, you don't have to debate it because people who don't believe it don't come out to talk to you, generally, and so it was a kind of a non-issue. In the Northwest, a again, it was just kind of an issue that nobody much cared about, and so whenever I did talk about it, informally or formally, which wasn't often, it was always a presuppositionalist approach. It was a Romans 1 approach. We know that God exists, and so the only thing we have to talk about is what your response is going to be. And
Right.
so that's kind of how, I would have approached that. So there would have never been an 11 premise argument for me. Presuppositionalists have a much easier job of it.
Right. Now, this is not the show we're doing. We're already in the weeds. Um, and I guess you could say something like there are certain things in the universe that are harder to detect than other things. So yes, God is in some sense not like the Great Wall of China or the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? And so we have to get there through alternate routes. Okay, fine, but I'm not aware of anything that we uh, think exists other than these things like gods and healing energies and that sort of thing that are uh, whose existences are defended solely on the notion of argumentation. And I less and less care about those things these
Yeah.
days.
No,
And I know
I hear you.
that's not the show we're doing. So, feel free to edit all this
You
out.
don't remember the show we're doing. It may be the show we're doing.
Oh well,
Uh,
look at that. That's
you don't remember, and I'm hungover. What?
right.
So
And I
this
would I
this is
would
the show we're
blame this
doing.
on right. I would blame this on me being but then everybody'd say, "How do you ever remember anything? You're always hungover. What's wrong with you?"
Well,
So nobody'd be surprised if I played that card. So,
so look,
yeah.
Andrew
So
grew
this
up
stuff.
from in the part of the South, and probably in the part of the church, some of his church time when drinking was not an issue. I was a non-drinkard. I have never been a drinkard. Um, I have had wine on social occasions. I once, uh, went on a honeymoon and a hotel suite, and we got a bottle of wine, and uh, we drank a few swallows of it, and God, it was gross. It was just disgusting. You see, the problem with me is I just
Dude,
don't
you're
like
crazy.
alcohol. It's not that I'm moral. This is not a moral stance for me. Um, I just have never tasted any alcoholic beverage from a white Zinfandel, to a rum that tasted like anything other than alcohol, and it's the alcohol that I don't like.
Well, look, also definitely not the show we're doing. I don't
No,
because
I look,
I
I've
don't
got
know
more
what
to
to
say
tell
I
you.
got more to say on this because, when I go to a nice restaurant, and if there's an alcohol-based, sauce on a steak or something, I will not have it, and I used to tell the waiters when they would tell me about the specials, "No, I don't like alcohol," and they would say, "Well, all the alcohol is cooked out, it's just the flavor," and I would tell them, "That's the problem." The flavor the taste is the problem, so
And I can hear them. Uh, I can hear them shaking their heads and rolling their eyes.
yes,
Yeah,
to
I
this
know,
day,
I
they are
know.
still doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's me, folks. I was about as much of a Boy Scout as you get, other than a nasty porn habit, which is another show. Look, we've done that show. We don't need to we don't need to talk about that again. Well, I mean, not this month.
um, Okay, man, these are particularly nasty weeds that we're off in today.
Okay. Look,
I
we're
don't
going to
know
get
the way
into the
back.
show right now, but I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you right now, if this show goes long enough, all of the weeds that we've been going through will tie into the subject, I bet. And
Okay,
so now that I remember the subject, let's go ahead and get started with the show.
there's
So,
there's
folks,
n- it, it's yeah. I know the show. It was a kid up front, and yes, we could. I don't have that much time this morning, so
right.
we'll see how far we
All right.
get.
So here's the subject, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. I've been saving this for a supplemental. I thought about doing it by myself, and I realized no, I'd like a conversation partner to talk about this because I know that Andrew is going to disagree with a lot of my thesis, and this is going to be a little bit difficult for the both of us. But I wanted to circle back around to a thing. Andrew and Matt just celebrated their 100th episode. I don't really know how they count episodes over there because I bet they have more than 100 episodes. Um, but I mean, they've labeled the 100th episode, so good for them. Um, and they called it 100 episodes of hate because I think a lot of Christians just hear atheists or the word atheist and think hateful. And it's
Yeah, we
simple.
got some recent email on that somebody wrote in shortly before. Yes, we've got a lot more than 100 episodes,
Yeah,
but in the way of counting, you know how these things are.
I do.
They're sort of
I stopped putting numbers on my episodes because it's a big lie. Whatever the number
right.
I put
Well,
on it
I
is just
told you
not true.
my new episode counting scheme is season one, episode one, season two, episode one, season three, episode
Okay, we're
one.
gonna have to talk about seasons. That's not how it works. That's you're
but but along what we sort of have thought of as the main trunk, the main channel of conversations there, we hit that 100. And then, of course, there were proscenium shows and Ask an Atheist Anything shows, and we've had specials. And yeah, you know how, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Look, at
Uh,
some point you just say 100th episode just to have an event. And
right, right.
I think it was a great event. I hate that
Thank you.
I hate that I missed being on it. I was invited, folks. I just couldn't make it.
I
Um,
missed 90% of it too. We ended up with an emergency call, and so
yeah. So I wanted to correct the record and maybe expand on the record a little bit because I know for a fact that neither Andrew nor Matt hate Christians. The, whoever they hate in their lives, I'm sure they hate somebody. It's not because of whatever religion they happen to be in. And I can tell you from my perspective, I don't hate Christians. Some of the best people have ever known and know are Christians. I am very proud of the many Christian associations that I have had. They have helped to shape who I am. They have changed my life for the better. They have been extremely generous. They have been mentors. They have been parents. They have been friends. And my love for people who are Christian runs very, very deep. And so I wanted to take an episode to talk about the good of Christianity. And I'm not entirely sure where it's going to go. I have one or two uh, prepared thoughts on the subject, but this is a wide ranging issue and we might have to revisit it because there's a lot to talk about there. And so before I open the first bullet point, um, by the way, American culture is so violent. The world is so violent. I hate using terms like bullet points, believe it or not, because bullets. um, I don't. I just want to move away from that, but I have no idea what words to use. We'll call it subheadings. The first, are H2.
Main points.
Before we get to that, I just wanted to give Andrew a chance to speak for himself on his hate/not hate for Christians.
Oh boy, it's going to take a long time to unpack this, and sort of that. And so, of course, that's what this is about. Uh, do I hate Christians? No. Um, as much as I can say that I don't hate any particular group of people, right? Um, are there some things that we'll explore and with a certain amount of liberal thought, can I say, are there things about Christianity that I think are positive? Well, yes, in sort of a in sort of a larger sense, I think we'll get there. The further I get away from Christianity, uh, the more it presents itself as a net negative, and was a net negative when I was a Christian. But can we can we dig through uh, can we dig through the the history and find some positives? Probably so, if we work hard enough, and and I think that's what this is about. Like you, I have uh, Christian parents. They are more nominally Christian than yours, and I grew up in the Southeast, and then yes, I came from a place where Christians allowed their children to drink. That was
And own guns and ride four-wheelers.
oh yeah. Well, I just think when you can say, "Oh yeah, I allow my child to drink," you can just sort of get on with the rest of that
Well, I
as
mean,
part of what's in the backpack.
you could just identify them as Baptists. That's that's what they are.
That is but but can I find things about my Christian life that was positive? Um, well, we're going to find out, and I will do my level best. But our journeys, while they happened in nominally the same denomination, were very different. And I think I'm going to have to work harder at it than you'll have to. But we'll see.
Yes,
We'll
yes.
see.
I can definitely see that because I had a different Christian experience. When I went off to the Northwest and started experiencing different brands of Christianity, and I think that I sojourned in a more positive kind of Christian matrix than you did for a longer period of time. Now, I don't know if you ever had
Mhm.
anything other than the fundamentalist experience, but I certainly had that growing up in my early adulthood. But I also
Mhm.
have had everything between that and progressivism, and I've had full on progressivism. I sojourned at the Universal Unitarian Universalist Church, the UU. Um, and I got to tell you, I loved it. I loved going there. And this is after I had been able to acknowledge that I wasn't a believer anymore. Uh, but I really loved that experience. And after having had that experience, I think it was after, I'm not sure, before or after, I had experience with a very, very liberal branch of a very conservative denomination. And those people, excuse me, when I think of Christian, I think of those people. And there wasn't a bad one among them. And I learned so much for them. I respect them like parents to this day. And here's the thing about that kind of Christian, and I'm just going to say this. I don't have any proof of this, but it is my sense, having been a part of the Christian environment for most of my life, they would have been amazingly good people without religion. They didn't need religion for a moral narrative or framework. They used it,
Yeah,
but they
yeah,
didn't need it. And
yeah.
I find that the more conservative you get, the more they act out their religion, the more they act in accordance with what they believe their religion is. And the more toward the progressive end you get, the more they change their religion to act out their greater morality.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. Um, the the conservative churches that I was in, and because of where I live, um, there really were no liberal churches in the denomination that you and I grew up in.
There was actually one in Montgomery. I don't remember the name of it, but it was one of those churches where people. It was the church that could not be named. People wouldn't mention it
Carriage,
in
I
whisper.
think you're thinking of Carriage Hills,
Maybe
um,
I don't remember,
Highland,
but
Highland,
there was certainly one that was
or Carriage Hills.
very liberal, and
Yeah.
they were kind of the behind the whispers.
I know that. So they eventually uh, took Church of Christ off the sign, and it that was back in the, oh goodness, 80s or 90s, something like that, and they became the Family of God at Carriage Hills.
Yeah,
So,
that
yeah, I
sounds
think they would
right.
have, you know,
That's exactly what happened with the church that I ended up with at my last church. They took the denominational name off the sign, and several, high donor people left. There were friendships that broke up over
yeah.
that, but
Um,
they felt so convicted uh, by it that they were willing to have that break with the mothership, if you will.
Families divided. It's worse than college football, and rooting for opposing teams.
Speaking of which, did Alabama win yesterday? That's all I want to know. I'm gonna go back and watch the game if I can find it. Did they win or not?
49-7.
Was Who had
They won.
49? Okay.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
look,
Yeah.
Alabama, it's been a long time since Alabama has lost a game, just been skunked. So when you hear a score like that, obviously Alabama won, but
Yeah, yeah,
I'm the kind of college football fan where if I really care about the game, I won't watch it live and I will look at the score
Well,
to make sure I want to watch the game, and then I'll watch the game if I'm happy with the score.
they were playing Middle Tennessee yesterday.
Yeah, okay. Look,
Uh,
Southeastern
they
Conference football, folks. I'm sorry, the season is upon us. I now live in the South again. I'm going to go to some Jackson State games, which is right across the street from where I work, and I'm going to pull for the home team just because it's the South in college football, and I am that kind of fanatic. I
I
might buy a
think
beer
we
and not drink it.
I think we've got Ole Miss in week 5. Maybe it's week 4. We've got Mississippi and Ole Miss back to back.
Yeah, forget about tickets to that game. I can assure you, any tickets that Mississippi's colleges have with Alabama were sold out 3 years ago. Alabama has that effect on ticket sales, so you gotta know who to bump off if you're gonna get some
Yeah,
tickets.
yeah, yeah.
So,
You can scalp the tickets. If you're a multimillionaire, you can hang around in the parking lot and
the
scalp the
one
tickets.
Alabama game that I went to was uh, Louisiana. Um, it was in Birmingham,
Mhm.
and Dick and I
Legion
went.
Field.
Yeah, Legion, and we found scalpers. We got tickets, and I mean, we had no tickets when we got there. And Dick knew the system, and he walked around, held up 2 fingers. Eventually, someone popped over, got some tickets, and we watched it. Alabama lost. Screw those guys. That was that was, that was the only Alabama
Clearly,
game I've
Nick
ever been to.
Saban was not there at that.
No. Look, Dick Nelson. You guys think that we're wandering off in the weeds again. James Nelson was maybe my best friend for the better part of my childhood and young adulthood. Um, he was a Christian who didn't need Christianity to
Yeah,
be a
that's right.
great man. And he was a part of the conservative fundamentalist branch, but he was never that. He was he was just an amazing human being who he was one of the first people who taught me that you could have what we might call today liberal values and a conservative religion and
Mhm.
still be a complete human being. I miss him so much.
Yeah, and it was he was a sad case because we got to mourn his passing before he died. Um, some some brain malfunction that left him uh, only a shadow of his former self, but he was a good guy. Um Adopted a couple of special needs children.
That he should not
Uh,
have, because they were the ruination of his life. But I suspect even at the end, he thought that they were his joy.
yeah, he did. Um, so that sort of runs us headlong into one thing that I could say about Christianity that would be positive. Under the right circumstances, with the right sheath of values taken from all of the possible Christian values, it can be a motivator to do something hard, something really hard, and stick with it, like raising two special needs kids.
Right. But he was that came out of the values that he already had. I can assure you the church didn't provide him the values to do that. Churches
No,
in
I
that
know this
area
from
didn't
church.
they didn't
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't do a lot of adopting of special needs kids. So
No. Uh,
some churches make adoption and fostering a real central part of who they are. Uh, Not so much in the really conservative churches, though. So Dick didn't get that from churches. He was always excessively generous. He was a person who was both smart with money and stupid with it. And the stupid part is his generosity. Uh, he would help anybody. Um, I'm tearing up just thinking about all of the time that I had with Dick and how much we our various adventures and how much I learned from him as a human being and how much I never got to tell him um, at the end.
yeah, there was no one left to tell it to.
Yeah, he was
Uh,
his case. There's no need talking about the specifics, but he was taken apart a piece at a time, and it's the worst way to go. Um, all at once in a flaming car accident would have been better.
yeah. See, uh, for the listeners, so they're not just sort of guessing. Um, he ended up contracting encephalitis, um, and that brain swelling spelled the beginning of the end. It was the first bout with encephalitis put him on a quite slippery slope. Uh, he was already up in age a bit. Then there was a second bout with encephalitis, and there was a slow decline through dementia, and the organic brain problems eventually took his life. Those
He died
bouts
in
with
slow motion.
encephalitis. What's
I'm
that?
sorry. I said he died in slow motion.
Yeah, and from the first bout with encephalitis, there was there was no recovery from that to become the James of the days before encephalitis.
So
And
I'm sorry.
well, it's through an entirely twisted and part of the story that just won't be told here. It was actually trying to care for those two special needs children that had a certain amount of causal link um, to that encephalitis. And yeah, a it's a tragic tale. It's a tale that should have been by a master of tragedy. And I can't tell the rest of the story here.
So I was already not a Christian at that time, but I got to tell you, I've had a lot of Christian friends get sick and die, but that one made me mad, because if there was a God, he was never more faithfully served uh, by anyone um,
Yeah.
than James Richard Nelson. And I, I simply, I don't care about the reasons that such a God would have. I live in the here and now. And Dick was punished as if he was Hitler. And he didn't deserve that.
Yeah, because the health problems didn't start. Yeah, the health problems didn't start there for
No,
him.
no.
But you know, on the point of this show, he did find uh, some peace in being a Christian.
Oh, I'm sure that he did. It was the matrix in which he was born, in which he grew up. It was a part of his culture and society. He would not have
Mhm.
understood the world without Christianity, and yet he knew us when we weren't believers. And even though we never talked about it directly, I think he knew. I think he knew, but it did not change how he related to us.
Before the encephalitis, before the first bout, I lived close to him physically. The geography was pretty
Yeah.
close, so we got to spend some time together. And the year before the first bout of encephalitis, he and I started talking about why I no longer believe. That it had been quite a while by that time that I was non. um, he grew up in that tradition that he grew up in at that church that he grew up in,
Right.
and this isn't supposed to be a negative. This is supposed to be a show about the negative traits of Christianity, but um, he was so isolated from the world around him that it was incredibly hard to get the conversation started.
Right.
He had so little reference for anything outside of that little church and the two houses that he lived in his entire life.
Right.
On that same little street, this man lived in his mother's house until he got married, and then he bought a house across the street from his mother and lived in that house.
Until
And
he
that is
died.
the house he died in. He
Yeah.
lived on one street his entire life. So when he and I would talk about um, any big ideas. He didn't have reference for them. And it made my eventual deconversion something hard for him to understand because there was no world outside of those two houses in that church he grew up in.
Yeah. Okay. So rather than thinking of this segment as a rant, think of it as a memorial. And I, I wanted to open that up. Uh, I didn't know how much I was going to talk about Dick, but um,
I didn't know he
I
was going to
just
come up at all. That was that's,
it's
yeah,
almost impossible if you're trying to do a podcast about the positive things of Christianity. You have to think about the positive Christians in your life, and he's the first one that comes to mind. There are many others, but um, what I want the audience to hear is the depth of real emotion that we have for the people who are maybe trapped in religion. And I would even say that for many of these people, religion is a very positive benefit. And I'm gonna get into that a little bit. But I would not the last thing I would have wanted to do was to deconvert James Nelson. I would never have wanted to do that. I don't want to deconvert my parents. Yeah, I won't
yeah.
let them read my books. I just won't. I don't want the people who rely on that framework to not have it. And
Mhm.
it's not like they're gonna go out and become axe murderers or anything. But I think that some people would suffer psychologically and emotionally more than some others in breaking away. And for many reasons, the religious framework uh, is an integral part of the country, of the world, of societies. I think that the most influential human being on earth is the Apostle Paul. Uh, and so I studied and study him. And whether you like that influence or not, and by the way, I say Paul and not Jesus, whether you like that influence or not is irrelevant. It has to be acknowledged. And it also has to be acknowledged that not every uh, footprint that Christianity has left in the sand has been bad. So I don't want to make that case either. So before just getting into the positive case for Christianity, I do want to touch on some things that I do hate about the religion because I do hate all religions. To be clear, and I don't know what religion I hate more. Probably Christianity because it's the one I know. I can't hate Islam as much as Christianity, even though they blow up buildings and Christians don't do it as often. Um, I can't hate Islam though as much because I don't know it. I can't speak to it. I don't know what passes for Islam today. I do know that when I lived in the New York area, when I worked in New York and Chinatown, Manhattan, and the various places, and lived in New Jersey, I was around Muslims all the time. Um, that not a single one of them blew up a building. you know, I saw more hijabs than sun hats, uh, and I don't know what makes Muslims tick, but I love them. I hate the religion. I hate all religions, but the reason I don't talk about counter Muslim theology is because I don't know Islam and I don't care that much about Islam. Christianity, the voting bloc in America is not moved by Islam. It's moved by Christianity. So the things that actually matter in my life are moved by Christianity. And so I want to just take a couple of minutes. I don't want to dominate the show with this, but I want to take a couple of minutes to just lay out some of the things I dislike about Christianity. Uh, and I know this is going to be the easy segment. for for Andrew, but I will just get us started here with um, the absolutism of fundamentalism.
Mhm.
Because so I'm separating out fundamentalism from progressivism. In fundamentalist Christianity, and by the way, that's the kind of Christianity we're faced with politically speaking. Those are the ones who are most activist in things. So it doesn't matter whether they're the biggest part of the population or not. Um, they have a certain absolutism that is instilled in them through their religion, and it bleeds all the way down to their politics. So, the Constitution, uh, whatever it says, whatever they think it means, they're absolutist about it. That must be the case. With religion, it's the Bible is just another constitution for them. It's a book that is divine and sacred, and what is in it, whatever they understand about it, cannot be changed. It must absolutely be the truth. And even if you learn different things, there are mechanisms built into this kind of Christianity that tell you that the absolute correct truth is the religious take and not any other take. And so if your religion tells you that 2 and 2 is 3 and not 4, it does not matter that that breaks your mind. You must then say that 2 and 2 is 3. That's the kind of absolutism that we're talking about. We're talking about people who believe in their hearts and will sometimes say it out loud that homosexuals should be stoned to death because it says so in their book. They believe that. They believe that witches should be burned at the stake because it says so in their book. And they're not engaging their own morality. Their morality is strictly based on the absolutism that they get from their religion, and they will bend themselves in the shape of that religion no matter what kind of awful person it turns them into. And once again, I don't blame that on the people themselves. This is a mechanism built into very conservative fundamentalist religion, and you cannot negotiate with that. They brook no negotiation. You cannot reason with that. It's not reason that drives them. And so that makes them very, very dangerous. And that makes those types of religions very, very dangerous. In Christianity, in America, like I said, whether it's the biggest part of it or not, it is the most vocal and activist and dangerous part of it, and I hate it.
I don't have much to add to that. Um, this, this is just going to come off as something that sounds like it was taken off the pages of atheist talking points. Hopefully, listeners will extend me a little more credit than that. The devotion to the Bible as a book that can answer all questions is probably the thing that I find most troublesome about Christianity in the United States today. And you were making an appeal in that direction. Uh, I, I will just have to agree that there's a problem there. That if we could move that out of the way, we would be in a better position to reach across the aisle in some instances with uh, with Christians that otherwise I can't find an inroad with. So what am I talking about? Well, your Bible doesn't speak to global warming, so you can quit telling me. You can quit telling me that it does.
Mhm.
Your Bible doesn't teach you that all parents are uniquely qualified to raise their own children. It doesn't. And even if you think it does, um, please look around at the huge number of children who aren't being well raised. Um, for this group of people, David, that you were talking about, there's no convincing them that they can't just go and in some cases, and I really know people that do this. They think they can randomly open the Bible and read a few verses, and that God will have led them to the answer to whatever problem they're having at the moment.
Yep, seen it many
And I
times.
would like to say, because I hear the listeners, I get the same feedback you do, but that's not most Christians. Okay, fine. But if you're right, I should run into it far less often than I run into it. Maybe it's not the majority of Christians, but it is prevalent enough to be an influential body of Christians. And so I don't actually care if when you're going and counting noses, everyone that you touch would raise their hands, because that's not actually what matters. We're talking about influential enough group of people that this is commonplace, that when you get into trouble and you've worked all the ways that you can think of to work out a problem, you just go and open a book and do some reading and sit in a closet and pray or whatever, and you think that whatever comes out of the end of that, that is what you call a solution. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the solution was uh, in your favor. It doesn't matter what hard times you take at the end. Whatever the solution is after this weeping and gnashing of teeth set of events, Christians just accept that as God having spoken. And I was one of those. And this sort of devotion to uh, finding an answer in an ancient book is a thing that I think is substantially harmful. Uh, we see Christian families make horrible financial decisions based on this book. They make horrible child raising decisions based on this book. They make job decisions based on this book. They make decisions about how they interpret uh, significant social policy on this book. How do they see modern science? It's based on this book. How do they treat their brothers and sisters in times of family crisis? Based on this book. I presume I don't need to go on with that.
Yeah, I would just pile on that these are the people who are constantly talking about morality and family values and such, but they cede the bigger part of their own human responsibility to do the work of morality to a God. Whatever this other being thinks, whatever the church thinks,
Mhm.
whatever the religion thinks, whatever the Bible thinks, whatever they can glean from that, that's going to be at least some part of their moral calculus. And I would say that you are humaning wrong whenever you cede any part of your moral calculus to a god. That's a problem because really, that god is the work of some other human's creation, perpetuated by your local church and your local shepherd, which makes you
Ay,
the
ay.
sheep. And so, whenever you say, "Well, yeah, I spank my kids, I belt with my kids because spare the rod, spoil the child," uh, your bigger problem is not even that you're hitting your kids. I mean, that is a problem. The bigger problem is why you're doing it. And you have ceded your human responsibility to someone else to tell you that that's what you should do.
Yeah. Look, so we decided to take a minute to talk about the negatives of Christianity. We landed in the same place. Had I been given the mic first, I'd have started largely where you did.
So
I
let's
don't I don't mind exploring one more round, but we can
no, let's
we
make
can
a
move
let's
to
make a hard
the
turn. I
positive.
just I just wanted to I'm trying to cover the basis so that the viewer understands where I am with Christianity. And I wanted to get that out of the way so that I could put into context the positive things. And I have just hit a button and I'd like to stop that. I don't know what's happening. Please stop.
Probably have to
Okay.
hit another button.
Yeah. All
Sorry,
right, there we go.
just trying to help.
No, no, I that was really helpful. Thank you.
It's no problem.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
I
unplug.
practice this.
Yeah. So sounds like tech support. Yeah, just unplug it for 10 seconds and plug it back
Oh,
in.
okay.
Uh,
That was
so thank you,
that
sir.
that was out of all the things you've ever said to me.
Oh no, I can make it worse. It sounds like first level tech support.
Oh,
Uh,
oh, you know what?
this
Uh,
show is over.
yeah,
No, we got to get to the at
wow,
least
I
this
just found
level.
something I hate more than Christianity. Who knew it was going to happen here on Skeptics and Seekers? Well done, Dave.
So um, here is how I kind of contextualize Christianity because I really don't know that brand of fundamentalist Christian is the bigger part. It is the louder part. It is the more dangerous part. It is the part that we have to look out for. But I don't know if it's the bigger part or not. And what I think is happening with religion, and this is going to come out kind of clunky because I didn't write anything down to help guide my thoughts here, but what I believe is going on with Christianity is a little bit uh, Jordan Peterish. I've been watching
Oh God.
Jordan Peterson videos. Yeah, no, I don't like him either. I think he gets pretty much trounced in every big discussion that he is in. However, when he talks about God and Christianity, it's important to understand he's not talking about a God that Christians would recognize as a God. So any Christian who thinks that Jordan Peterson is saying something that is, confirming of their religious ideation, you're wrong. You just don't understand what Peterson is saying. That said, I want to come alongside Peterson with what I do think he's saying, and the part that I agree with. I think that in the grand scheme of narrative, of human narrative, uh, Christianity is one of the major factors that have contributed to the human narrative. And it is one of the places where humans, not just Americans, but where humans retreat to when they need to get in touch with a human narrative that's bigger than their own personal narrative. Now, you can argue whether it's a good thing or a bad thing and whether they get good information or bad information from Christianity, but I do think it provides that moral framework. And here's what I think is going on with Christians, whatever the middle of the road Christian is, up to the progressive Christian, because I see this a lot. And I know that when we've talked about this, you haven't seen this as much as I have. Um, I believe that people are uh, changing the Christian story to better suit their own human ethic. And fundamentalist Christians would say, "Yeah, and that's the problem." And I would say, "No, that's the solution." Furthermore, I think it's always been happening from the beginning of religion. Every religion it starts off fundamental, and then it moves toward progressivism. Some faster than others, some slower than others. But the reason it moves away from fundamentalism is because while people enjoy and maybe need the framework because they don't have, any other framework without it. They also need a religion that works with their best lights and their better angels. And so while some people would say, I would kill my kid if God told me to, I think most Christians simply wouldn't do it. And what they would do is come up with a part of their theological framework that says, well, that wasn't God talking to me. Because for them,
You
their
know,
God wouldn't say that. Right. So they have a
and
God
and
that's
and some
kind of created in
Christians,
their image.
right? Some Christians would read that story, and I think the ones that I would the ones that I would uh, most easily go out to dinner with would say, "No, actually, I wouldn't kill my child for God, because in the end, when I read that story, that's not actually what God wanted. What God wanted was uh, to know that there was um, a level of devotion in Abraham that was unmatched. In the end, God didn't actually want a child killed, and that's why He stepped in.
Right. And
And
I think that's what saves the story for the average Christian. They have come up with a framework where uh, God didn't want Isaac killed, and he never wanted Isaac killed, and they have come up with some kind of moral framework where this test of God makes sense, and usually they just kind of hand wave it away because they know that it doesn't make sense. But they know that they wouldn't kill their kid. They know that they wouldn't appreciate the story if Abraham had killed their kid, and so they kind of create uh, a narrative, a meta narrative from that narrative. And no matter what the Hebrew writers were actually saying, we have learned to read it in a different way that matches with our best lights.
yeah, so I was thinking. Sorry, my little girl is saying, "Dad, when are you going to come outside and play with me?" And
Soon, soon, a
uh,
very, very short 3 hours.
oh yeah, that definitely won't work. Uh,
So,
I'll,
no,
I'll be drawn and quartered by that time.
yeah,
Look, thinking more about this Abraham story just for a moment. Surely, the way the story turned out, any Christian should say, "I absolutely would not kill my child for God," because the only story I know of where that was the point of the story. And this is sort of the common understanding is that God absolutely did not want a child killed. And so to come back behind that story and misunderstand it so thoroughly as to say, yes, I would kill my child for God is the sort of perversion that I wish Christians would just walk away from, right? Uh, there's a better Christianity. And the better Christianity is one that says, you know what? My God cherishes little kids and doesn't want any dead.
right.
And
Well,
no, I wouldn't kill my child for God because that's not actually what God ever wanted.
right, and that's where most of them are. But I would let me throw out two more examples.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me throw out two more examples to kind of illustrate my point. I'm not going to be able to fully make my point, but I can at least get it started for the comment's sake. So the Bible, I would contend, is an awful book, and it represents a kind of fundamentalism that existed a few thousand years ago. um, that doesn't exist today. So you can argue, well, that was an isolated story. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about the greater Jewish population. They weren't asked to kill their kid and that sort of thing. Except there were the commands where they were told to kill their kids. So you got a child or a grown son. It doesn't really matter. I've heard some people try to wave this away by saying, well, they were over 18. Uh, fantastic.
Oh, okay. Now it's a better story.
Now that makes it better. Also, not nowhere in the story, but sure, let's just say, and these commands are, when you've got a profligate child, someone who is a drunkard and is disrespectful to their parents, you are to kill them. Now, uh, m- many, if not most, Christians uh, have children, teenage and young adult children, who end up with a drinking problem or a drug problem, who, sass back to their parents uh, because it's a part of the human maturation cycle that we rebel against authority figures at a certain point and we start stretching our wings and finding our own voice and our own way in the world. This is not a bad thing. This is just how we develop. And if you have a child that never rebels, people would be more concerned about that child than the one that rebels. There are 0 people today, uh, I would say even in Jerusalem, who believe that the proper response to that is to kill your kid. No one's killing their kid for that. It's just not a thing. Don't talk to me about some rogue branch of Islam. I'm going to leave Islam out. There's some very rogue branches of Islam that I think don't represent the the main of that religion. But you see, we have told that story. Jews told that story even at the time in a way that kept them from killing their kids. Because Judaism would have simply died out because all kids rebel, and that's just a fact of it. Let me mention one other in that vein. It's the one where uh, God gives the command that if you have a child that basically, promotes or suggests that you worship some other god, you are to kill them with prejudice. Just kill them. Yours should be the first hand to raise the stone. The whole community should get involved, and it's one of those injunctions where God says you are to have no pity. Don't even listen to them. Don't hear them out. Kill them with prejudice the moment they start talking about Baal. Um, no one did that because once again, we've got Jews exist, and they would have died out. I think we don't see anything in history that suggests they did that. There's certainly nothing since reliable history that suggests that ever happens. And so, even the people closest to that fundamentalist idea never actually did it, and they always used their better human impulses to turn that story into something that represented um, the better aspects of humanity, and they found a way to change that story or ignore that story or hand wave away that story, and they still consider themselves faithful to the religion that contains that
Mhm.
story. So, religion on the main uh, is not, in fact, causing death, murder, and mayhem. People are being good people, even with religion, and they're just having to rearrange those stories in a way that supports that. I've got one or two others from the New Testament, but I just want to give you a chance to comment on that.
Um, yes. So, in general, I think one of the things we find ourselves doing, and whether this is a result of whether this was a result of the religious teaching, or whether it's a, a more human trait instilled in us, we are social creatures subject to the facts of evolution wired into our brains. I think very often we do save religion from the worst parts of itself. Now, it's easy to say, right? But that's the real arc of religion, is to do things that are pro social. That is what religion gives us. If that is your view, and the reason you do things that are pro-social is because of your religion, and you think you wouldn't do them without your religion, please keep your religion. we can use all the pro-social we can get at the moment.
Right. I would
But I do,
argue that the entire religious impulse is to do pro-social things that people think are pro-social at the time anyway. And as they grow and develop and mature, so does their religion to reflect that.
yeah, different show. I will come back for that one. Listeners, if you want the show, here's what I have in mind. Is the center theme of dominant world religions pro-social? Is that what religion is about? Boy, ooh, yes, let's have that show.
Yeah.
Um,
And look, I know that this is a difficult thing for me to say and prove. Uh, and so if we have that show, I'm in a debate style. I'm going to lose. I I don't have a problem with that. Um, that doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that I can't really show it. And there are also good reasons to think that I'm wrong. And so I'm not one who says, I'm right and you're wrong about that. I just happen to think that it is, and I would have to put together a lot of, hard data to make a more academic argument for that than I'm prepared to do. But I do want to just say it because I think even the worst religious texts were trying to be pro-social for some particular group of people. So religion wasn't pro-social in a global kind of way, but it's pro-social for the people that it was intended to serve. And yes, they still had some wrong ideas, some bad ideas about what was good for the people. But I think the intent of it was to preserve and help a people to flourish. And that's why they were able to, quietly changed the texts, even though they didn't change the writings so much. They changed the meaning of the texts until they became mystical and they could be thought of and conformed in all kinds of ways. Can I give you one example from the New Testament here?
yeah, I just want to say to all of that, we don't use pro-social in it all the same way. we just don't use
No, I
pro-social
think
in
we
it all
do.
the same way.
I just think my case is hard to make, and so I think yours is easy to make.
Well, I will say yes. I think your case is hard to make too
Yeah. So
on that one.
yeah, um, I'm not trying to win. I'm
I know you. Yes.
well. I mean, it's you, and there's a competitive streak that runs through it. But we're also able to talk about things that we uh, believe but can't prove. Um, and this is just one of those for me. I know that I would lose the debate officially, but give me a couple of years and I wouldn't lose it, maybe. But let me give you one example from Jesus, because you know that Jesus has got to come up. There was who was it? Gandhi, who some figure of yore who said, "I love your Christ. I don't much care for your Christians." And I would reverse that. Um, I love your Christians. I don't much care for your Christ. And so, and by the way, this should come as no surprise to anyone who's followed my Red Letters projects and so forth. I do not hail Jesus as a good man or a good teacher or uh, someone who did a good job in giving good advice. But just one of the examples. It's a common one. I make it often, and I just want to share some of the kind of responses I get to demonstrate my point. So Jesus, on more than one occasion, to more than one person, including to crowds, said to sell your possessions and give the money to the poor. All right, that's a theme with Jesus that went throughout his disciples, went throughout his ministry. You could see it in the early church that people interpreted it this way. And while not every disciple followed that particularly, and the apostles did not teach that after Jesus left the scene, um, Jesus definitely did teach it, and he definitely was some brand of ascetic. Um, and so he did believe in shedding one's earthly possessions and not leaning on the comfort of possessions, but living day by day in the grace of God. So Jesus didn't have a bank account, not the Jesus of the stories. All right, so what do Christians do with that? So the last time I had a debate with someone on the board about that, they mentioned things like the goodwill and uh, Christian hospitals, Christian institutions that serve people. And I will just go ahead and mention the Greater Birmingham Ministries, GBM. It's if you're in Birmingham, Alabama, get connected to GBM. They're a very good Christian-based uh, charity resource, and I relish my time, cherish my time that I spent with that organization very very briefly. But so organizations like that were brought up to say, you see, Christians are obeying Christ's commands. Because I was saying nobody actually does this. Well, here's the one time I'm going to say this: I'm right and they're wrong. Because what they do is they change what Jesus said. So rather than dealing with sell all your possessions, they point to charity organizations that are given possessions, and then they focus on the give the money to the poor. You see, these organizations are serving poor people. That's the humanist. That's the reformed version of the Jesus command. It does not, in fact, correspond with anything that Jesus said in those two short sentences. Sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor. No one is doing that, but the way that Christians can keep hope alive in Jesus in their religion is to just translate the words in their head to mean be generous, and charitable to poor people. Not what Jesus said, but that's how they can translate it and pretend that they are following Jesus, convince themselves that they are following Jesus because Jesus was a good person, they're a good person,
All right.
and so
I
they
get,
want to make Jesus say the thing that validates their impulse to be a good person and help the poor. Not at all what Jesus was saying, not at all what he said, but that's how they translate it, and that's how they translate really everything that Jesus said. They take what he said, turn some words around, and translate it to be a good person. Right? And so
right.
I believe that that is, in fact, a good thing about religion, right? When Jesus said it, or when whoever wrote it said it, they thought that they were saying something that was good for the people of that time. And maybe, they thought that asceticism would have been the best way to live one's life. I think that was always wrong. But I think that they were trying to be pro-social and help um, people kind of get out of the rat race, uh, as it were. But that's not how we live our lives, and that's not how we understand pro-social behavior today.
Yeah.
We understand pro-social behavior with charities and good, things like that. And so we just rearrange some of Jesus's words. We change it. We pretend that we're following it, but we have basically changed the Bible to reflect and support our better humanity. And I think that that is still going on today. It goes on in every pulpit across America, and I think that the 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 religious foundations help support that framework of being an ultimate good person. And then what people can do is individually reinterpret the words of Jesus in the New Testament, um, so that supports their best efforts to be a good person. Okay, I'm gonna stop, but that's kind of that's kind of my thesis here. I give religion credit for being a good enough foundational human story to allow people to connect to a greater humanity bigger than themselves, but that also allows them the freedom to, at least in stealth, change the text and help the text to grow and morph to represent the best humanity of the current day.
Mhm. So I think, oh boy, one of the things that I think is going to be leveled as a criticism in the comments section of this show is that we are going about this in a way that is far too simplistic to suit to suit what we're actually trying to unpack. So I'm just going to go ahead and say yes to that criticism. Um, but if what the intent is to just see if there is some can some good be gleaned from specifically Christianity, because let's face it, that's what this is about. Um, then that is the incredibly simple that is the incredibly simple goal. I do think that there are Christians who have in their mind a life of service for others, and I even think that it is possible for those Christians. It's good, babe. Um, and I think it's possible to derive that value from some set of things that you can take out of Christianity. I don't think that's the purpose of religion, and I am actually very, very, very happy to have that debate. But I do think that it is possible for uh, people to come across that value in their in their religious walk, and for that to be a driver for individuals. Though I don't think that's generally what religion is about.
Yeah,
And so, yes, there are ministries. We've got Baptist hospitals, we've got Methodist hospitals, we've got Presbyterian hospitals. We don't have Church of Christ hospitals. Oh, sorry, wasn't supposed to be in there, was it?
mhm,
So yes, we have those things, and somehow they got branded with the names of denominations.
sure. And just to quickly interrupt and speak to that, there's nothing in the Bible that says you should build hospitals. I mean, in the Bible,
No,
hospitals
there's
were miracle
right,
healings, but there's
right.
nothing in there about, developing denominational infrastructures and developing, uh, uh, what do you call it? The extra denominational infrastructures of charities and hospitals and things like that. But we have done those things out of our humanity, and we read that back into the text, and we say, you see, that is actually following the uh, commands in the Bible, even though there's no command to do any such thing. And I think that is an example of the flexibility of the a religious underpinning that allows you uh, to use it as a foundational springboard
Mhm.
for the greater humanity that you want. And I don't think it's the majority of people that look at the Bible as a written in stone, this is what we have to do. I think that's a big part, especially in the American voting bloc. But you also have to remember most Americans eligible to vote don't vote. A minority of Americans vote in elections, which
Yeah,
is a thing that
35% is a huge turnout.
Right. This is a thing that maybe the most of the world doesn't know, I'm not sure, or it may be the same in other parts of the world. Um, so of the voting bloc that is motivated to vote, um, conservative Christians are a big part of that. And so that's one of the reasons they have such an outsized influence. But Christians, the ones building hospitals and devoting their weekends to soup kitchens and things like that. Once again, nothing in the Bible to support those types of things. And you and I both know that there are denominations that would even forbid those things because they're extra biblical, right? We know that there are branches in it
Can you
within our own
question that?
denomination
Right.
that did that. So all of those are examples of us taking some things in the Bible that were definitely not that and using it as a springboard to create that. And would we have done those things without religion? Eventually, maybe. But I'm not sure that we would have done it as fast and as much worldwide. Well, let me say one other thing. I'll give the floor to you and I'll
Hmm.
start to wrap up. Um, the usefulness of religion, the pro-social part of religion, in religious texts and so forth, were always about the narrow group of people that they were written for. Notice the words of Jesus to his disciples, the two times when he said, uh, I come for the lost sheep of Israel. Uh, and don't go into the Samaritan population, say, and the Gentile population. Uh, we come for a certain group of people. This was kind of a message, and so the things that Jesus was saying would have been maybe beneficial to his disciples and beneficial to his target audience. But as Christianity grew more global, then people had to think about, well, what is the best thing for my greater society, for my state, for my country? How does Christianity expand to that? Well, the words of the Bible don't expand to that. You have to create a framework that is flexible enough to take those things that were very provincial and very limited to a very few number of people and stretch that to a more global sense, because what's good for a small tribe in a small region of the world at a narrow point in history is not good for the world. And so Christianity and religions have to be flexible enough to grow that center of good from the community to something more global. And I think the fact that Christianity still stands in more regions of the world than it was ever intended to be I think, is a testament to the fact that it is a good enough framework to hold that weight. And I will also give the Christian one other thing. No, I don't believe that I owe every good thing in my society to Christianity, but I do think I owe many good things in my society to not just Christianity, but the religious impulse of a lot of people. And I am aware of that and I'm grateful for that. I don't think we need it today, but I think that we do have a lot to thank Christianity for, as people of every generation have found a way to grow that very narrow, time bound provincial work into something that fits the new realities.
So that's a good drawing, Dave. Good job. Um, so can Christianity hold the weight? Oh boy. Um, we've left out government, economics, civic organizations, uh, all secular organizations. Within Christianity, we've left out those people within Christianity that have motivations to do good that aren't specifically tied to Christianity or to a Christian drive. Um, we've left out intergovernmental interaction. We've left out world organizations like the Red Cross and the World Health Organization, et cetera, et cetera. I can't get to where you are about Christianity, but But I can say that regardless of Christianity, I think there are plenty of Christians that want to do good. I'm frankly tired of picking up the proverbial morning paper, right? Uh, and trying to give Christianity the credit for doing good
Mm-hmm.
when the front page seems to be covered with examples of places where it is not doing good at all. So, the last pediatric, the last pediatric cardiologist moved out of Louisiana in the last few days because the state legislature passed a sheath of laws against the LGBT community.
Mm.
I wonder, dear listener, and my good friend David, what those lawmakers would identify as. And since I think you might say, but look, they think they're being pro-social, at least for some.
Mm.
Can we actually say they're being pro-social by passing those laws? I whether you agree or not, I think the overwhelming view generally will be no, it's not pro-social. That said,
I agree with that, by the way.
okay, yeah, no, fair enough. That said, there are still nonprofit religious hospitals. St. Catherine's, I think is in New Orleans. Apologies if
St.
I'm
Jude is probably the best example
St.
of
Sure.
a Christian
St. Jude's
inspired.
Children's Hospital.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's one of the best things the world has ever produced.
Right. So I'm not trying to go behind any of that. I have given to St. Jude's. I will give again in the future. Because my dollars don't have a they don't have a church border. I'll tell you a little story about Christian pro social behavior.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, our collective family decided we would all get together and pool our holiday resources and not buy gifts for any of the adults. And by adult, if you're old enough to have a child of your own, you're an adult, right? Okay. Um, and so we were not going to buy gifts for adults. We would pool our resources, and we would actually find a family in need. And we did this one year. In fact, we did it 2 years. 2 years ago, my little nuclear family, me and my girlfriend, our little girl, we decided that we would still participate, but we had a family that we wanted to help, and this family was being helped through the local Red Cross and not through a church. And the rest of our Christian family, well, they were so pro-social that they would not join us. The family that the only families they would help would have to come out of one of the churches that they attended.
So
Now,
I was
they
just going
did.
to. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say, for the sake of not my time but yours, we can start to wrap up, and I'll give you the last word in closing remarks. This isn't it, but I just wanted to
Sure. Thanks.
let you know, because I know that you've got some time pressures.
Yeah, I do. So I do want to say they did still go help a church family.
Yeah.
We did a separate thing. The sad thing is that Since then, there's been no talk of doing it again. So the Christians listening may think, well, see, I got atheists breaking a good thing. And it was a good thing, right? The families that we helped when we were all doing it together, the two families, the two different years, they legitimately needed help. There's no question about that. And I don't begrudge having given either of those families money. And mostly it wasn't in the shape of dollars and cents in a bank account. Mostly it was in the shape of linens and towels and toys for the kids and uh, kitchen plates and cups and forks and knives and that sort of
Right.
thing. But if we're going to do good, and I agree that Christians want to do good, can we? My plea: can we just stop being so artificial about it?
So, yeah, I feel your story. We've had some maybe similar experiences in that way, but I would argue as a part of my thesis, if it can even be called a thesis, is that
You can call it whatever you want as long as I get to do the same.
I sure. I mean, but I can tell you that my thesis is not terribly well developed. It's kind of in a beginning stage, but um, I would say that that impulse to help only people is reflected in the Bible, but it's reflected in a part of the Bible that is going through the change of being very provincial, very local, very time bound, space bound to something bigger. And you always have these, it doesn't happen smoothly, like the expansion of the universe. it it happens in fits and starts in different places. So, there's this passage of scripture, I can't remember the book, chapter, and verse, "Do good to all men, especially those in the household of faith." You know the passage that I'm
Yep, I
talking
do.
about. So this is an example of the thing that you're talking about and the thing that I'm talking about as well. Your church people want it to be do-gooders because that is a human impulse, and they have not been able to expand their story more globally. And so they're still stuck at especially those in the household of faith. But I would argue that other churches are thinking globally and they are doing good. They are able to do good to everybody and still fit it in that same religious framework. And so I would just
That's
argue that
great.
that the framework of your family is behind the curb uh, a little bit, but it's a part of that natural maturation. So as kind of my closing statement here, and I really hate to close at this point, so maybe we can collect a few comments and come back and hit this again.
I think we
um,
should.
but part of my close would be the homosexuality issue uh, around the world. It used to be a slam dunk that homosexuals were bad, you know, um, and it went from God saying to kill them to uh, people tolerating them, but not really integrating them into society. And we have expanded the story now to include homosexuals in the religious story, excuse me, to so great an extent that the majority of Christians, and here I understand the fundamentalists are saying to themselves, yeah, but those aren't real Christians. The majority of Christians are in favor of homosexuality and marriage equality. That's how much the story has expanded. And the same thing has happened with abortion. And people have been able to expand their religion and expand the tent to include enough people so that the majority of people identifying as Christian are in favor of abortion. And it went from Christians saying abortion is murder to most Christians saying, no, it's not. Um, and we see these movements in religion all the time. And there are some, this is, part of the problem with the fundamentalist branch of any religion. They are the slowest to expand their community to a more global community. They are still doing what they think is pro-social to their small niche of a group. And it just takes a while for them to expand further, a little bit at a time. Christians always say, yeah, it was Christians that, ended slavery. Great. It was Christians that started it in the way that we had it too. And Christians had to fight Christians to end it. There were also atheists ending it. But there was a time when the people of God thought slavery was a good thing, and that tent has broadened to include slaves now to say, no, slaves are not only people too, they're our brothers, and they should not be enslaved. This is the elasticity of religion as it stretches its blanket to cover more and more communities. And I think that that is the arrow of progress that we see. And yes, it's not smooth. There are pockets of it. Sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back. It's not a smooth arrow. But across religion, if you trace it back a few thousand years, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, whatever you trace back, the arrow of progress is that those religions expanded bigger and bigger and bigger until the human impulse to do good was able to uh, become a part of that religious framework, uh, and support the human uh, motivation to be their best selves. So I think that religion has served a good purpose there. I think that we would have had good
I
things
love you
without
too,
religion,
babe.
but I think religion has served good purpose. Um, Certainly, it's not all good. Certainly, I mean, I started off with something that I hated about religion. I could do an entire show and have about things that I hate about religion, but I just want to acknowledge where religion is, and this is why I don't really want to kill religion, despite the fact that just a couple of weeks ago in one of my shorts, I said that I was going to kill religion one short at a time. Um, I don't actually want to kill religion. I want to help religion expand its borders to become more global and more permissive of people who need that framework to be their best selves. And I do see that happening in religion. And I will end my comments there.
So I've been sort of chuckling to myself. I don't know if it came through on mic. I,
Oh, yeah.
all I heard was the moral arc of religious history is humanism.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it is. Uh, and as you
um,
know, I'm not a humanist per se, but yes, to the extent that that's probably the closest quote unquote worldview that uh, matches my ideas. I do think that the moral arc of religion is and has always been humanism, even in the early days of the hateful texts.
I wonder. We've got some crossover in our audiences between skeptics and seekers, and still unbelievable. And I wonder to what extent some of them are saying to themselves, see, the reason they had 100 episodes of hate is because Andrew really hates, uh, Christians and Christianity. I don't know how I've been heard today. I did my level best to find the positives that I could find in Christianity. I don't hate Christians, not even a little. The problem that I have is that I think the good that Christianity does is incredibly limited. And if that came across here, then that's a fair hearing. That is, in fact, the way I see the moral arc of Christianity. if we suddenly substitute the word religion for Christianity so that we can include Buddhism and Hinduism and New Age spiritualism and uh, the naturalists who think of their naturalist experiences as religious experiences. When we can do all of that, okay, I probably am in a place uh, where I can find more charity toward the notion of religion. But I don't see them as easily interchangeable. And when I'm asked to consider religion as Christianity, I tried to be careful. I don't know that I was ultimately successful, but I tried to be careful even while we were talking about the positives of religion versus the positives of Christianity, right?
Mhm.
Although I don't know that I kept track of that as well as I should have in the show. But I can be more charitable toward the idea of religion, though I think it is a charity born of confusion and not of reality. Because in order to figure out what somebody's motivations are religiously, I think we have to know more about what their affiliation is. Are they Christians? Are they from the Nation of Islam? Are they Jews? Are they Gnostics? Um, what what is the exact driver, and is it religious? So I will end much where I started. I think there are plenty of religious people, some of them Christians, who derive their notion of a life of service and of good deeds and of their charity and their positive impact on the world around them. I think they derive that from the religion that uh, that they study and understand. I don't think it's by accident. Uh, I just I just think that religion, in any specific sense, is the kind of driver where it is possible to pin your good deeds to it, the truly pro-social things that we can do, like like building hospitals. You can you can pin that to your religion. You can also think that you are giving a life of service to your God by disadvantaging everyone around you that doesn't see the world exactly the way you do. And maybe you still think you're being pro-social. You're helping those in your tiny, tiny religious community. And I will leave it at that's not what I mean by pro-social.
Right. And I don't mean to come behind you and make another closing statement,
No, please do.
but I wanted to clarify a thing, even for both of us here, for anyone listening who's not familiar with our particular shows and things. My defense of religion today should not be construed in any way as saying that the
Let's see if we
religious
can find
claims are true. I do not believe that any religious claims are true. Right? I do not believe in any gods. Uh, I do not believe in resurrections. I do not believe
it. So
in
sweet.
those claims, and I'm not supporting any of those claims. And I think I can say, pretty clearly, Andrew is not supporting any of those claims. So this should not be simply because I find religion useful. I don't find it true. And by the way, this is Jordan
Mhm.
Peterson as well. He doesn't believe in any of the religious claims. But he does find them very useful, and I
Sure.
think that
Let's keep looking.
that may be right. And furthermore, I would say that religion is already on the path of becoming irrelevant. It has been a scaffolding that has gotten us this far. But I think, like all such scaffolding, it eventually erodes from lack of use because it's not needed anymore, and we can get on fine without it. And I think that it's getting there. I don't think that's today. I don't think that we should remove that scaffolding all at once today. I don't think that we are ready for that. But I do believe it is, you know, dying a natural death as it served its purpose. And I will also agree with one of the last things you said. I just want to make this clear. While religion provides a framework for our greatest goods, it also provides a framework for our most terrible evils. And this may be one of the most damning things about religion as a container for morality or anything else. Because yes, we do have the good impulses, and people, get into religions because they want to do good. But we also have people who want to do bad. And guess what? Those impulses can also be driven by the same religion. So, look, I don't know how much of that you caught, but I will again give you a chance uh, to round that out.
Well, so I'll start in a different place, and this will be uh, a way for me to round all of this off. I guess you were right at the beginning. Uh, okay, go give her the water. Let's see if she'll take it. Um, at the beginning, you said that I would likely disagree with you. Um, and I don't. I mean, well, I guess I have, but I don't. I don't want the dividing line to be terribly sharp, right? I can find good in religion. I just I have the problems that I have, and maybe we should continue this. I'm certainly open to debating. I'm just chatting about this again when we see what the comments look like. This is probably a thesis worth refining.
It's
It's
gonna
also
it's gonna be a
probably
bloodbath, and it's gonna be my blood. I know what the comments are gonna look like.
well, hey, I have been the atheist spear catcher, on my own a time or two. Um, so, but I think that it's worth refining. I think that it's worth trying to figure out what the Christians think the good of Christianity is socially, right? Because there's certainly all of them are going to say, well, love God and keep His commandments. That's the good of Christianity. Okay, yeah, blah blah. Okay, but what is the social good of Christianity? And the next time we come back to this, I think I'd like to explore what the social good of Christianity is, and is there a social good that Christianity provides that cannot be provided without it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair thing to explore, and I know that I'm gonna land, at least initially, on there are good things that we have in society that we wouldn't have had at the time and in the way we had them if not for Christianity. That said, does that
Mm.
mean that society couldn't have done it without Christianity? Eventually, in a different way, yes. And will society be able to sustain those things without Christianity? Most certainly, but possibly not today. But we're getting there. We're getting close. So that's probably the line that I would be taking there. But I don't know for sure.
Mm. So, I I know we're look, folks, we're going to wrap up. It's going to happen. I promise.
Look, we're bad at closing. That's
Yeah.
just a fact. So
So, so the question that I have is, imagine that we could rewind time to the point at which British royals got involved in Christianity early on. Okay, so now you've got money and power, you've got influence. So imagine that there was a thinker of the time who just had good words for humanism, right? It just promoted a doctrine of humanism without Christianity, and that the British royals get involved as deeply and emotionally and as committed then about humanism as they did about Christianity. Could we have done what Christianity did without it? And in the cosmic oatmeal cookie sense, I I think the answer is yes, it's possible. I don't know what it would have all looked like, right? Because we don't get to live our alternate histories.
Right.
Um, but there is a part of me that thinks, a large part of me that thinks that with the right branding, we could have done it without Christianity and done it better and been in a place that you're talking about where eventually the moral arc of religion is humanism. And at some point we cast off these religious trappings and so that leads to the question, right? Could we have done it from the beginning without it?
Yeah, and the
Anyway,
answer for
uh,
me is I just really don't know because I part of this that we haven't talked about. Maybe we can sit and listen to some of the Jordan Peterson stuff that I've been listening to, and we can talk about. I like the one with Sam
yeah.
Harris the most, but I think, and other Christians have argued this. Uh, I kind of sort of agree with them more today than I did initially. Human beings are creatures of story and narrative. uh, we don't respond well to bare facts. We have to put our bare facts in a container
Mhm.
so that we can easily digest it. And so I think that what would have been required of that, that influential humanist that we're hypothesizing about, is they would have needed to craft it not in bare facts and truths, but in a story that was durable
Mm,
enough for simple people to
mhm.
get behind and see themselves as central characters in that story. Humanism is bad at doing that. We are bad at story.
Yeah, yeah, we
We
still
don't
don't
we
have that
don't
ability.
have a narrative that that can hold people that allows themselves to see themselves in a character in that narrative. Religion, all religions are containers of story that allow people to participate, and then within those religions are sprinkled the bare facts, right? And sometimes those bare facts are so buried that they're useless, and sometimes the story is so broad that it can support good people and bad people to do bad things, and so I it's not perfect, but the fact is we are by nature, I think, storytelling narrative people, and all of our facts and ideas have to be couched in some kind of narrative. I can tell you now, evolution, while I believe every word of it is true, is a shitty narrative. And, and it's
Right.
really hard. There's no real pathos in, in evolution, and so Christianity wins just in on that score, just by being the kind of story that simple people can then pour in, a framework of being into. So I think that if we are going to see that humanist society, and I think we will, and I think we are, but it's going to be within some existing container narrative that stretches itself enough so that we can get more and better facts fed into people so that the facts uh, move forward and the story recedes. But I think at some level, we're always going to be creatures of narrative. And so we're going to always, whether it's scientists or sociologists, anthropologists, we're always going to need to couch our facts into story and narratives so that humans can digest them. I think that that's just a part of the type of creature that we are.
So I don't have anything to add to that. My life is story driven. It's the story of my life. And every I make decisions you know, uh, based uh, on the constraints around me, yeah, right? Uh, and boy, we're going to land in determinism in a second, and I don't want to have that show again
Nope.
today. Um, and, and
I think we're done for the year on determinism.
yeah, uh, but my life is regardless of determinism. My life is story driven, right?
Mhm.
I am uh, in my mind the picture of myself. It is true that I happen to accept that I am the product of unguided evolution, and that's a harder story than there's a God out there that loves you and made you uniquely, and He wants you and loves you, and He has nothing but good intent toward you, and will reward you eternally for a certain kind of yeah, okay, but it's just a nice story.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and hopefully we outgrow it, but I also hope that the leaders of, the more humanist type movements that are able to encompass a more global set, I hope that we get better at human narratives that people can grasp, because I think that some of us who may not need those narratives are just undermining the importance of them. Uh,
yeah.
just the facts, we just want the facts, just want the truth. The truth is meaningless if people can't absorb it. And the story is the wrapping of that truth. The narrative is the wrapping of that truth. And you may poo-poo it and say, a narrative. What kind of childlike addle brains need this narrative? Humans do. We just climbed out of the trees. We're just able to put on clothes. Some of us still have trouble putting on shoes to walk around. We are not that advanced. We still need the story.
Hey, Velcro is demonstration that there's a God, dude. I'm just okay. Never mind. Sorry.
So
Look,
anyway, look, that's
that's-
you, for the last time. You can have the last word here.
look. Well, it's now gone around the twist, right? It's become jokes in closing, which means we're too far. What I am going to do, what I am going to do now, is add to someone else's narrative. I am going to take my little girl to the park that she loves, and we're going to go and we're going to play superheroes, and we're going to feed the ducks, and we're going to swing on the swings and play on the merry-go-round. And I am going to help her build a past where she knows her dad loves her without respect to whether a God does. And that for today is the best I can do.
And with that, we will see you next time. Bye bye.